The Grand Ashford Hotel glittered with holiday splendor, chandeliers sparkling. Above elegant tables, a towering Christmas tree in the corner adorned with gold and red ornaments. The air filled with the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. The annual corporate Christmas dinner was the social event of the season, where Chicago's business elite gathered to network, celebrate, and be seen. Victoria Brennan stood near the entrance in a crimson dress that spoke of confidence and success, her dark hair falling in perfect waves past her shoulders. At 38, she was the youngest CEO in her company's history, having built Brennan Technologies from a small startup into a powerhouse. She'd sacrificed relationships, sleep, and countless personal moments to reach this position. To most people in the room, she had everything. But the little girl holding her hand, 7-year-old Sophie, wearing an emerald green velvet dress and clutching a worn teddy bear, knew differently. Sophie knew her mother worked too much, smiled too little, and carried a sadness that had settled into her eyes after. Sophie's father left them 3 years ago, unable to handle having a deaf daughter. Sophie couldn't hear the music or the conversations swirling around them, but she could feel the vibrations of the bass through the floor, could see the Christmas lights twinkling, could read the tension in her mother's shoulders as they navigated the social minefield of corporate networking. Victoria had debated bringing Sophie tonight. Her assistant had volunteered to babysit. Her mother had offered to come stay at the house. But something had made Victoria decide differently. Perhaps loneliness. Perhaps guilt over all the evenings she'd missed tucking Sophie into bed. Perhaps the simple desire not to be alone during the holidays, even though she'd be surrounded by hundreds of people. "Stay close to me," Victoria signed to Sophie, the gesture fluid and natural. They'd been using sign language since Sophie was 2 when the diagnosis came. "This will be boring, I know. But we'll leave early, I promise." Sophie nodded, her bright eyes taking in everything with the careful observation of a child who'd learned to read the world through sight rather than sound. They made their way through the crowd. Victoria stopped to shake hands, to exchange pleasantries, to talk business with executives from competing firms. Sophie stood quietly beside her, occasionally squeezing her mother's hand when the crowd grew overwhelming. Then disaster struck in the form of spilled champagne. Victoria didn't see it happen. Someone bumped into a waiter, the tray tilted, and suddenly, Sophie's emerald dress was soaked with sparkling wine. The little girl looked down at herself, her eyes filling with tears. The dress had been special, chosen carefully for tonight. Now it was ruined. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." The waiter looked horrified, already reaching for napkins that would do nothing to help. Victoria knelt down beside Sophie, signing quickly. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's just a dress. We can clean it." But Sophie was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, and Victoria felt helpless. Her daughter couldn't hear her reassurances, and words alone weren't enough. "Excuse me," a male voice said. "I might be able to help." Victoria looked up to see a man in his early 30s, wearing a work uniform, navy blue coveralls, with a name patch that read Jake and a tool belt hanging from his hip. He clearly wasn't a guest. The hotel must have called maintenance about something. Yet here he was, kneeling down to Sophie's level with an expression of genuine concern. "Hi there," he said, and his hands moved in fluid sign language as he spoke. "My name is Jake. I'm sorry about your dress." "That was an accident, and accidents happen to everyone." Sophie's tears stopped midstream. She stared at him, surprised. Adults rarely signed to her, her mother, her grandmother, her teachers, but strangers almost never. Certainly not strangers who worked as handymen at fancy hotels. "You know sign language?" Sophie signed back, her small hands tentative. "I do," Jake confirmed, his smile warm and genuine. "My little sister is deaf. I've been signing since I was 10 years old. It's nice to meet someone else who signs." Sophie's face transformed. The tears dried, replaced by a smile so bright and genuine that Victoria felt her breath catch. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her daughter smile like that at a stranger, openly, joyfully, without the careful guardedness that usually characterized Sophie's interactions with hearing people. "Do you think we can fix my dress?" Sophie signed. Jake examined the stain thoughtfully. "I think we can make it better." The hotel has a laundry service, and I know the head housekeeper. She's magic with stains, but it might take 20 minutes or so. Would that be okay? Sophie looked up at Victoria for permission. Victoria, still processing the unexpected kindness from this maintenance worker, nodded. That would be very kind, thank you. Jake stood, meeting Victoria's eyes for the first time. Up close, she could see he had warm brown eyes and an open, honest face that suggested kindness as a default setting rather than a calculated social strategy. Everything about him was different from the polished executives around them. His work clothes, his straightforward manner, his complete lack of concern about interrupting a corporate event. I'm Jake Morrison, he said, extending his hand. I work maintenance here at the hotel. If you'd like to follow me, I can take you to the housekeeping department. They'll take good care of Sophie's dress. Victoria Brennan, she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his hands calloused from physical work. And this is Sophie. Thank you for helping. Most people wouldn't bother. Most people should bother more, Jake said simply. He offered his hand to Sophie. Ready to go on an adventure to meet the laundry magicians? Sophie took his hand trustingly, and Victoria found herself following them through the elegant hotel, away from the Christmas dinner and the networking and the carefully crafted corporate personas, into the service corridors where the real work of running a luxury hotel happened. The head housekeeper, a woman named Rosa who was probably in her 60s, took one look at Sophie's dress and clucked her tongue sympathetically. Champagne on velvet. That's a challenge, but I've seen worse. Give me 15 minutes, sweetheart. While Rosa worked on the dress, Jake entertained Sophie in the break room, teaching her card tricks and signing the whole time. Victoria watched, astonished, as her usually reserved daughter laughed and engaged, in a way she rarely did with strangers. She's never smiled like that before, Victoria found herself saying. With someone new, I mean. Usually she's so guarded. Jake glanced at her, his expression understanding. Kids who are different learn to be careful. They learn that most people don't make the effort to communicate with them on their terms. When someone does make that effort, really makes it, not just for show, it means something. How did you learn to sign so fluently? Victoria asked. Most siblings of deaf children know some basics, but you're signing at a native level. My sister Mia is 12 now. When she was born deaf, my parents were overwhelmed. They didn't know how to handle it, and honestly, they didn't handle it well. Jake's expression grew somber. They put her in oral programs, tried to force her to lip read and speak, refused to learn sign language, because they saw it as giving up on her being normal. It was awful. Mia was isolated, frustrated, angry. When I was 10, I decided to teach myself sign language. I checked out books from the library, watched videos, practiced until my hands cramped. I became Mia's interpreter, her connection to our family. That's remarkable, Victoria said softly. You were just a child yourself. I was her brother. She needed someone to see her as she was, not as what our parents wished she'd be. Jake watched Sophie trying to learn a card trick, her concentration absolute. Eventually, my parents came around. They learned sign language, they connected with the deaf community. They realized that Mia wasn't broken, just different. But those early years were hard on her. I swore I'd never let another deaf child feel invisible if I could help it. Victoria felt tears pricking her eyes. Sophie's father left us when she was 4. He couldn't handle having a deaf daughter. Said it was too hard, too complicated, too much work. I've been raising her alone for 3 years. His loss, Jake said firmly. Sophie's incredible. Bright, curious, resilient. Anyone can see that. Not everyone does see it, Victoria admitted. Most people see the hearing aids, see me signing, and they make assumptions. They talk slower, louder, like that helps. Or they talk to me instead of her, like she's not there. Or worst of all, they look at her with pity. You're not looking at her with pity, Jake observed. I'm looking at her like she's a kid who spilled champagne on her favorite dress and found someone kind enough to help. That's what I see. Victoria studied him. This maintenance worker in a fancy hotel who spoke perfect sign language and entertained deaf children in break rooms and saw people instead of categories. Why are you working maintenance if you're fluent in sign language? You could be an interpreter, a teacher. Those careers pay better than fixing toilets and changing light bulbs. Jake smiled slightly. I'm working on my master's degree in deaf education, part-time at night. I work here because the hours are flexible, and the hotel is paying my tuition as part of their employee benefits. In 2 years, I'll be teaching at a school for the deaf. But right now, I fix toilets and change light bulbs and occasionally rescue little girls with champagne-stained dresses. Here we are. Rosa returned with the dress, the stain completely gone. Good as new. Sophie's face lit up when she saw the dress. She signed thank you to Rosa repeatedly, then turned to Jake. Will you come back to the party with us, please? I don't know anyone else who signs, and everyone else is boring. Jake laughed and looked at Victoria questioningly. I'm not exactly dressed for a corporate Christmas dinner. I don't care what you're wearing, Victoria heard herself say. If you have time, we'd both appreciate the company. Sophie's right. Most of the people there are boring. Present company included. You're not boring, Jake said. You're scared. There's a difference. The observation, delivered gently but directly, caught Victoria off guard. Scared of what? Scared of being seen as anything other than the successful CEO. Scared of showing vulnerability. Scared of letting people close enough to hurt you again. Jake held up his hands. Sorry, that was presumptuous. My sister says I do that, read people too accurately and then say what? I'm thinking without a filter. Don't apologize, Victoria said quietly. You're right. About all of it. They returned to the Christmas dinner together, the CEO in her crimson dress, the 7-year-old girl in her newly cleaned emerald green velvet, and the maintenance worker with the tool belt and the kind eyes. People stared. Victoria ignored them. Sophie held both their hands as they walked, and for the first time in years, Victoria felt like she wasn't facing the world alone. Jake pulled up a chair at Victoria's reserved table, front and center, the place of honor for one of the event's major sponsors. Other executives raised eyebrows at the maintenance worker joining them, but Jake seemed completely unfazed. He engaged Sophie in conversation, teaching her more card tricks, explaining how different things worked, the chandelier above them, the sound system, the way the waiters carried multiple plates. How do you know all this? Sophie signed. I've worked here for 3 years, Jake explained. I've fixed almost everything in this hotel at some point. I know how it all works. My favorite is the old elevator system. It's from 1924, and it's still running perfectly. Can you show me? Sophie asked eagerly. Someday, sure, Jake agreed. If your mom says it's okay. Sophie turned to Victoria. Can we, please? Victoria found herself agreeing, even though she knew it meant seeing Jake again, meant opening herself up to possibility, meant risking the careful walls she'd built around her heart. Throughout dinner, Jake translated conversations for Sophie, not as an obligation but as a natural extension of inclusion. When executives spoke to Victoria, Jake signed the conversation so Sophie could follow along. When someone told a joke, Jake made sure Sophie got the punchline. When the band started playing and people began dancing, Jake taught Sophie how to feel the vibrations in the floor, how to move to music she couldn't hear. She's never danced before, Victoria said, watching her daughter spin with pure joy on the dance floor, Jake guiding her through simple steps. Everyone can dance, Jake replied. They just need someone to show them how. Later, after Sophie had exhausted herself dancing and fallen asleep in her chair, her head on her mother's lap, Victoria and Jake talked. Really talked, in the way people rarely did at corporate events. Honestly, without pretense, about real things that mattered. Jake told her about growing up working class, about his parents' initial rejection of his sister's deafness, about his determination to make a difference in deaf education. Victoria told him about building her company, about the loneliness of leadership, about the guilt she carried for all, the moments she'd missed with Sophie while pursuing success. You're here now, Jake pointed out. That matters. Is it enough? Victoria asked. I've given her everything money can buy, the best schools, the best therapists, the best technology, but I haven't given her enough of me. Then change that, Jake said simply. You can't go back and reclaim lost time. But you can choose differently going forward. It's not that simple when you're running a company. It's exactly that simple. It's just not easy. Simple and easy aren't the same thing. Jake looked at her directly. What's the point of building an empire if you're too busy to enjoy the life you're supposedly providing for? Victoria had no answer for that. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Victoria collected her sleeping daughter and prepared to leave. Jake walked them to their car, carrying Sophie when Victoria's arms grew tired. "Thank you," Victoria said as Jake settled Sophie into her car seat. "For everything tonight. For helping with the dress, for entertaining Sophie, for the conversation. You turned what would have been a miserable obligation into something actually meaningful. Can I see you again?" Jake asked. "Both of you, I mean. Maybe I could show Sophie that elevator system I mentioned. Or we could get coffee. Or I could just exist in the same general vicinity as you and call it a date." Victoria smiled. A real smile, not the corporate mask she usually wore. "I'd like that. All of the above, actually." They exchanged phone numbers, and Victoria drove home with Sophie sleeping in the back seat. Her teddy bear clutched close, a smile still on her face even in sleep. Over the following months, Jake became a fixture in their lives. He showed Sophie the historic elevator system, explained how buildings worked, taught her about tools and fixing things. He took them to deaf community events, introduced them to families like theirs, helped Victoria understand that Sophie wasn't lacking anything. She was simply part of a different culture with its own richness and beauty. But more than that, Jake taught Victoria how to be present, how to turn off her phone during dinner, how to prioritize bedtime stories over late-night emails, how to measure success, not by quarterly earnings, but by the smile on her daughter's face, the warmth of connection, the building of memories. "You're transforming," Victoria's mother commented 6 months after that Christmas dinner. "You're happier." Sophie's happier. "What changed?" "I met someone who reminded me what actually matters," Victoria said simply. A year after that Christmas dinner, Victoria stood in the same hotel for the same annual event, but everything was different. Sophie, now 8, wore another velvet dress, this time royal blue, and stood confidently beside her mother. No longer the guarded child from the previous year. And Jake was there too. No longer wearing his maintenance uniform, but dressed in a suit. Victoria had bought him, attending not as an employee, but as her partner. "Look how much has changed," Victoria signed to Sophie, gesturing around the familiar ballroom. "You smile more now, Mommy," Sophie signed back. "Jake made you happy again." "You both made me happy again," Victoria corrected. "Jake helped me remember what I'd forgotten, that the best things in life aren't achievements or acquisitions. They're moments and connections and love." Later that evening, Jake pulled Victoria aside, away from the crowd, to a quiet corner near the Christmas tree. "I have something to ask you," he said, signing simultaneously so that Sophie, who'd followed them, could understand. He knelt down, not in front of Victoria, but between her and Sophie, including them both in the gesture. "Victoria, this year with you has been the best of my life. Sophie, getting to know you has been an honor and a joy. I know I'm not your biological father, but I love you like you're my own daughter." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring. "Victoria Brennan, will you marry me? Will you let me be part of this family officially?" Victoria's hands shook as she signed her response, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Sophie threw her arms around both of them, signing frantically. "Does this mean Jake will be my dad? My real dad?" "If you want me to be," Jake signed. "I would be honored to be your dad." "I want that," Sophie signed. "I want that so much." Around them, the Christmas party continued. Executives networking, champagne flowing, the same corporate rituals Victoria had participated in for years. But none of it mattered compared to this moment. Her daughter, her future husband, and the family they were choosing to build together. The wedding, 6 months later, was small and intimate, held in a garden with an ASL interpreter ensuring every guest could fully participate. Sophie served as flower girl, scattering petals while signing the lyrics to the processional music. For those who couldn't hear it, Victoria's vows were signed and spoken simultaneously, a symbol of the two worlds. They were joining the hearing world she'd always known and the deaf world Jake and Sophie had helped her embrace. 2 years after that, Jake finished his master's degree and began teaching at the Chicago School for the Deaf. Victoria restructured her company, hiring a COO to handle day-to-day operations, while she stepped back into a less demanding role. They had a son, Michael, who was born hearing but grew up bilingual, signing from infancy, moving seamlessly between deaf and hearing cultures. But Sophie remained at the center of it all, the little girl whose champagne-stained dress had brought her mother and Jake together, who'd smiled for the first time at a stranger, who'd taken the time to learn her language, who'd shown both adults what really mattered in life. On the 5th anniversary of that fateful Christmas dinner, they returned to the Grand Ashford,